She scrubbed his floors for 5 days before the most powerful vampire in the world looked at her with dying eyes and whispered, "I need you to marry me." She laughed because it had to be a joke. He had lived for 1,000 years without needing anyone. They said he was the most feared creature in history. They said nothing could kill him. But when she looked into his eyes that night, she saw the truth. He was already dying. And the only way to save his life was to end hers. But somewhere between the plan and the execution, he made a mistake. He fell in love with his sacrifice. And when she found the letter hidden in his library, everything he had built came crashing down. She stopped laughing. She started screaming. And he knew in that moment that he would rather die than watch her walk away. Damien Valtieri had lived for 1,047 years. He had buried enemies in unmarked graves across 3 continents. He had burned cities that whispered rebellion and rebuilt them under his name. Kings begged for his mercy. Immortals feared his shadow. And now, in the cruel irony that only fate could design, he was dying. He stood at the window of his ancestral estate, watching the sun dip below the mountains. His reflection barely flickered in the glass anymore. The curse was eating him from within, slow and deliberate, like a punishment savored. His younger brother, Lucien, entered without knocking. "You look terrible," Lucien said. Damien smirked. "And yet still more handsome than you." "A tragedy, really." Lucien did not laugh. "The council is asking questions. They smell weakness. Let them smell. When I am ready, I will give them something to choke on." Damien turned from the window. His jaw tightened. He had no heir, no bride, and no intention of letting vultures divide what he had spent centuries building. Across the estate, in the servant quarters, Vivian Cole was scrubbing blood from marble floors. Her hands were raw. Her back ached. But she did not complain. Complaint was a luxury for people with options. She had been hired 3 days ago. No interview. No references. Just a desperate woman at the gate, soaked from rain, asking for any work at all. The head housekeeper had looked at her like she was a stray dog. "You will not speak unless spoken to. You will not look at the master. You will be invisible. Understood?" Vivian had nodded. Invisible was her specialty. She had learned it young, hiding in closets while her mother's boyfriends raged. She had perfected it in foster homes where being noticed meant being hurt. And now, at 24, she wore invisibility like armor. She did not know the man who owned this estate was a vampire. She did not know he was dying. And she certainly did not know that in less than 1 week, he would ask her to become his wife. All she knew was that the floors needed to be clean before dawn. And Vivian Cole always finished what she started. "Now before we go any further, I need you to do something for me. If you are watching this and you have not yet subscribed, I need to ask you a question. Do you really want to miss what happens next? I put my heart into every word. The least you can do is hit that subscribe button and join the fastest growing vampire love stories community on YouTube. Also drop a comment right now and tell me where you are watching from. I would love to know which part of the world is enjoying this story with me tonight. Now let us continue. It happened on the 5th night. Vivian had been assigned to clean the East Wing Library, a room so vast it swallowed sound. Shelves stretched toward ceilings she could not see. The smell of ancient paper and something older, something like time itself, filled her lungs. She worked quietly, dusting spines of books written in languages she did not recognize. She did not notice him enter. "You missed a spot." She spun around, nearly dropping her cloth. He stood in the doorway, leaning against the frame like he owned the shadows themselves. Which, she supposed, he did. "I am sorry, sir. I will fix it immediately." She moved toward the shelf, but his voice stopped her. "You have been here 5 days. You have not once looked me in the eye. Vivian kept her gaze on the floor. I was told not to, sir. And you always do what you are told? She hesitated. When the alternative is starving, yes. Something flickered across his face. Not quite a smile. Something sadder. Look at me. It was not a request. She raised her eyes slowly and found his gaze waiting. It was ancient, weary, and beneath the coldness, something she did not expect. Pain. He studied her for a long moment. Then he laughed, a low, bitter sound. You are not afraid of me. I am terrified of you, sir. And yet you looked. Most cannot. She said nothing. Her heart pounded against her ribs like a trapped bird. Damien stepped closer. She could smell cedar and something metallic. Something dangerous. What is your name? Vivian. Vivian Cole. He repeated it quietly, as if tasting the syllables. Then he said something that made her forget how to breathe. I am dying, Vivian Cole. And I find myself in need of a wife. Someone to inherit everything I have built. Someone who will not be corrupted by it. She blinked. Surely he was mocking her. Surely this was some cruel game rich men played with poor women. You are joking. I have not told a joke since 1743. It did not land well. A man lost his head over it. Literally. Her mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. I am a maid. I scrub your floors. Yes. And you do it poorly. But that is beside the point. He circled her slowly, his footsteps silent on the stone floor. I have watched you. You take extra bread to the old gardener who cannot chew properly. You speak kindly to the kitchen boy everyone ignores. You work without complaint though your hands bleed. Vivian's throat tightened. No one had ever watched her. No one had ever noticed. I do not need a queen who craves power, he continued. I need someone who will protect what matters when I am gone. Someone with a heart still intact. He stopped in front of her. His eyes held hers like gravity. Marry me, Vivian. Inherit everything. And when I am dust, make sure the vultures do not win. A tear slipped down her cheek before she could stop it. Not from fear. Not from shock. But because for the first time in her life, someone had seen her. And he was asking her to matter. Vivian did not sleep that night. She lay on her narrow cot in the servant quarters, staring at the cracked ceiling, replaying his words until they lost all meaning. Marry me. Inherit everything. She almost laughed at the absurdity. Almost. By morning, she had convinced herself it was a fever dream. Rich men did not propose to maids. Vampires did not notice invisible girls. And dying kings certainly did not hand their kingdoms to strangers. She returned to her duties, scrubbing harder than necessary, as if she could wash away the memory of his eyes. But the household had changed. Whispers followed her through corridors. Other servants who had ignored her for days now watched with suspicion. The head housekeeper cornered her near the kitchen. What did he say to you last night? Vivian kept her expression blank. Nothing of importance. He commented on my cleaning. The housekeeper's eyes narrowed. Do not lie to me, girl. I have worked here for 32 years. I know when something shifts in this house. And something has shifted. Vivian said nothing. She had learned long ago that silence was safer than truth. Meanwhile, in the East Wing, Damien faced resistance of his own. Lucien paced before the fireplace, his composure cracking with every step. A maid. You cannot be serious. Damien sat in his chair, watching his brother with mild amusement. I am always serious. It is one of my many charms. The council will never accept this. She is human. She is nobody. She is exactly what this family needs. Someone uncorrupted. Someone with nothing to gain from my death except what I choose to give her. Lucien stopped pacing. His voice dropped low. Brother, you are dying. I understand the desperation. But there are noble vampire families who would offer daughters. Alliances that would strengthen us for centuries. Damien's expression hardened. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. I have spent centuries building alliances with noble families. Do you know what I learned? They smile while sharpening knives. They bow while counting the seconds until they can betray you. He stood, and despite his weakening body, his presence still commanded the room. I watched Father die surrounded by allies. Do you remember what they did? They carved up his territory before his ashes were cold. Our own cousins. Our own blood. Lucien looked away. I will not repeat his mistake, Damien continued. I will not hand my legacy to wolves dressed in silk. I would rather give it to a girl who takes bread to old gardeners. She will refuse, Lucien said quietly. She is not stupid. She knows this world will destroy her. Damien smiled, but there was no humor in it. Perhaps. But I have never been one to accept refusal gracefully. Back in the servant quarters, Vivian made her decision. She would go to him. She would decline respectfully. She would explain that she was not meant for thrones and inheritances. She belonged in the shadows, and she was content there. She walked toward the east wing, rehearsing her words. But when she reached his door, she heard something that stopped her cold. Coughing. Wet, ragged, terrible coughing. And then silence. She pushed the door open without thinking. He was on his knees beside the fireplace, blood dripping from his lips, his hand pressed against his chest. For a moment, he looked like what he truly was. Not a king. Not a monster. Just a man in pain. Their eyes met. You should not be here, he rasped. And you should not be dying alone, she heard herself say. She did not know why she crossed the room. She did not know why she knelt beside him and pressed her cloth to his mouth. She did not know why her hand trembled as she touched his shoulder. But she did all of it. And he let her. The physician arrived within the hour. An ancient vampire with hollow cheeks and eyes that had seen too many kings fall. Damien lay on the chaise near the fireplace, his color returning slowly. Vivian had been ordered to leave 3 times. She had ignored each order. The physician examined him in silence, then spoke without looking up. The curse is accelerating. You have weeks now. Perhaps less. Damien waved a hand dismissively. You have been predicting my death for 6 months. Forgive me if I do not weep. This is different. The physician finally looked at him. Your heart is failing. Not the organ. The essence. Whatever kept you anchored to this world is loosening. He glanced at Vivian, then back at Damien. I was not aware you had taken a companion. I have not. She is simply stubborn. Vivian felt heat rise to her cheeks. I found him bleeding on the floor. Was I supposed to step over him? Damien almost smiled. Most would have. The physician gathered his instruments. Rest. No exertion. No conflict. And no theatrics. When he left, silence filled the room like water. Vivian stood near the door, unsure whether to stay or flee. Damien watched her with those ancient, unreadable eyes. You saw me weak, he said quietly. Most who witness that do not live to speak of it. Are you threatening me? I am stating a fact. He paused. And yet here you stand. Unafraid. I told you before. I am terrified. Yes. But you stay anyway. That is the difference. He gestured to the chair across from him. Sit. You have questions. I can see them crawling behind your eyes. She hesitated, then sat. The chair was velvet, softer than anything she had ever touched. Why me? She asked. The truth this time. Not poetry about bread and gardeners. Damien was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different. Stripped of performance. 3 weeks ago, I watched you from this window. A delivery boy dropped a crate. Glass shattered everywhere. The head housekeeper screamed at him. Threatened to have him dismissed. Vivian remembered that day. You stepped forward, he continued. You told her you broke it. You took the blame. You took the punishment. Extra shifts. Docked wages. And you never corrected the lie. She looked down at her hands. He was 14. He needed that job. His mother is sick. Damien leaned forward slightly. I have lived over 1,000 years. I have met emperors and saints and monsters wearing human skin. Do you know how rare it is to find someone who sacrifices without expectation? Without calculation? She met his gaze. That does not make me qualified to inherit a kingdom. No. It makes you qualified to protect one. He settled back against the chaise, exhaustion pulling at his features. I am not asking you to love me, Vivian. I am asking you to outlast me. To stand where I stood and keep the wolves from the door. And if I fail, then you fail. But at least you will have tried with a clean heart. That is more than most can say. She wanted to argue. She wanted to list every reason this was madness. But something in his voice silenced her. He was not commanding her. He was trusting her. And Vivian Cole, who had never been trusted with anything, did not know how to refuse. I will stay, she said finally. For now. Until you are stronger. He smiled faintly. That could take centuries. You do not have centuries. No. He closed his eyes. But for the first time in a long while, I wish I did. She stayed in the chair, watching him breathe. Watching the fire cast shadows across his pale face. She did not know when she stopped thinking of him as a monster. But somewhere between the blood and the firelight, he had become something else. Something human. 3 days passed. Vivian found herself spending more time in the East Wing than the servant quarters. She told herself it was duty. He was weak. Someone needed to ensure he ate. Someone needed to monitor his breathing when the coughing fit struck. But the truth was simpler and more dangerous. She wanted to be near him. On the 4th night, the fire had burned low. Damien sat in his chair, stronger than before but still fragile in ways he tried to hide. Vivian sat across from him, a book open in her lap that she had not read a single page of. You never speak of your family, he said suddenly. She stiffened. Neither do you. I asked first. She closed the book slowly. There is nothing to speak of. My mother died when I was 7. I never knew my father. After that, it was foster homes until I aged out. He watched her without interruption. I learned early that attachment was dangerous, she continued. People leave. People disappoint. So I stopped expecting anything from anyone. And yet you give. Constantly. She shrugged. Giving is different. Giving costs nothing if you expect nothing in return. You are wrong. Giving costs everything. It is receiving that is free. She looked at him then, really looked. And she saw something beneath the centuries of armor. Loneliness. What about you? She asked softly. Who were you before all this? He was quiet for so long she thought he would not answer. Then he spoke, his voice distant. I was a second son. Overlooked. Underestimated. My father favored my older brother, Victor. Victor was everything I was not. Charming. Obedient. The perfect heir. He paused. When the plague came in 1347, my family was among the first affected. My mother. My sisters. All taken within weeks. Victor survived but was weakened. Father was desperate to save his precious heir. Vivian's chest tightened. A witch offered a deal, Damien continued. She could save one son. Only one. Father chose Victor without hesitation. She felt the words like a knife. But the ritual required blood. My blood. Father held me down himself while the witch drained me. I was 17. His jaw tightened. I should have died. But something went wrong. Or perhaps something went right. The ritual twisted. Victor received nothing. And I became this. Immortal. Powerful beyond imagination. And utterly alone. Vivian's voice was barely a whisper. Your father sacrificed you. My father considered me acceptable loss. A footnote in Victor's survival story. What happened to them? Damien's eyes flickered with something ancient and cold. Victor died of fever 3 months later. The very illness the ritual was meant to prevent. Irony is a cruel teacher. And your father? Damien smiled, but it held no warmth. My father lived another 20 years. Long enough to watch me rise. Long enough to see me become everything he never believed I could be. Long enough to beg for my forgiveness on his deathbed. Did you forgive him? The fire crackled in the silence. I held his hand. I looked into his eyes. I let him believe mercy was coming. And then I told him that I would spend eternity ensuring his name was forgotten. That no history would record him. No grave would mark him. That he would vanish as though he never existed. Vivian's breath caught. He died weeping, Damien finished. And I felt nothing. She should have been horrified. She should have seen the monster everyone warned her about. But all she saw was a boy who had been betrayed by the one person who should have protected him. You are not your father, she said quietly. No. He met her eyes. I am far worse. I have had centuries to perfect cruelty. And yet you have never been cruel to me. He leaned forward slightly. Because you have never given me reason to be. He reached out slowly and took her hand. His skin was cold, but his grip was gentle. I have done terrible things, Vivian. Things that would make you weep. Things that would make you run. But I have never once harmed someone who did not deserve it. She did not pull away. And now? Now I am tired. He closed his eyes. I have spent 1,000 years punishing the guilty. Perhaps it is time to protect the innocent. She squeezed his hand. And in that moment, something shifted between them. Not love. Not yet. But the beginning of it. The following weeks became something Vivian did not have a name for. She stopped sleeping in the servant quarters. A room was prepared for her in the east wing, close to his chambers. The other servants whispered, but she no longer cared. Let them whisper. Let them wonder. She had stopped being invisible. And strangely, it did not terrify her anymore. Damien grew stronger in some ways and weaker in others. His body was failing, but his spirit seemed to brighten with each passing day. He laughed more. He told her stories of centuries past, of wars fought and lovers lost and enemies buried in unmarked graves. "Tell me about the worst thing you ever did," she asked one evening. They sat on the balcony overlooking the estate. The moon hung low, swollen and silver. He considered the question with exaggerated seriousness. "In 1672, I attended a masquerade ball in Venice. A nobleman insulted my coat. Said it was outdated by at least a decade. And I bought his entire estate, evicted his family, and turned the property into a horse stable. Named the first horse after him." Vivian laughed, the sound surprising her. "That is petty beyond measure." "I am a petty man. It is part of my charm." She shook her head, but she was smiling. He watched her with an expression she could not quite read. "You should laugh more often. It suits you." "I have not had much reason to laugh." "Then I shall endeavor to provide reasons." He reached into his coat and produced a small velvet box. Her breath caught. "Do not panic. It is not another proposal. I learned my lesson about springing those without warning." He opened the box. Inside was a ring. Simple. Elegant. A deep red stone set in silver. "This belonged to my mother," he said quietly. "She died before I could become what I am. Before I could disappoint her." Vivian stared at the ring. "I cannot accept this." "You can. And you will." He took her hand and slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. "Consider it a promise," he continued. "Not of marriage. Not yet. But of protection. As long as you wear this, you are under my name. No one in this world or the next will harm you without answering to me." Her eyes burned. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you are the first person in centuries who has looked at me and seen something worth saving." She wanted to argue. She wanted to tell him that he was wrong, that she was nothing special, that she was just a maid who scrubbed floors and hid from the world. But when she looked into his eyes, she saw her own reflection. And for the first time, she did not look away. "I am afraid," she whispered. "Of what?" "Of losing you." She swallowed hard. "I have lost everyone I have ever cared about. I cannot survive losing you too." He cupped her face in his hands. His touch was cold, but his gaze was warm. "Then do not lose me. Fight for me. Stay with me. And when I am gone, carry me with you." "How?" "By living. By thriving. By refusing to let this world break you." He pressed his forehead to hers. "I have conquered nations, Vivian. I have toppled kings and burned empires. But you have done something none of them could." "What?" "You have made me want to live." A tear slipped down her cheek. He caught it with his thumb. "No more tears," he murmured. "Not tonight. Tonight, we pretend we have forever." She nodded, unable to speak. And for one perfect evening, they did pretend. They danced without music on the moonlit balcony. They whispered secrets like children. They laughed at nothing and everything. For one perfect evening, death felt very far away. But death was closer than either of them knew. It happened on a Tuesday. Vivian would remember that detail forever. Such an ordinary day for everything to fall apart. She had been in the library, searching for a book Damien had mentioned. Something about ancient poetry. Something he wanted to read to her that evening. She pulled a leather volume from the shelf, and a folded paper slipped from between the pages. It fell to the floor like a dead leaf. She picked it up without thinking, opened it without suspecting, and her world cracked in half. It was a letter, dated 3 months ago, written in Damien's elegant hand. The words blurred before her eyes, but certain phrases burned through. The human girl. Vivian Cole. Her bloodline carries the cure. The witch confirmed it. Her heart, freely given in love, will break the curse. She must not know. She must believe the marriage is genuine. If she discovers the truth before the ritual is complete, the cure will fail. She must love me willingly. And then she must die for me. Vivian read it 3 times. 4 times. 5. Her hands trembled so violently the paper tore. He had chosen her not for kindness, not for protection, not for love. He had chosen her because her death would save his life. Every gentle word, every lingering glance, every promise of protection. Lies. All lies. She walked to his chambers like a ghost. She did not feel her feet touching the floor. She did not feel anything at all. He was sitting by the fire, a book in his lap, a faint smile on his lips when he saw her enter. There you are. I was beginning to think you had gotten lost in the stacks. Did you find the poetry collection? She threw the letter at his chest. His smile faded. He looked down. He saw. And for the first time since she had known him, Damien Valtieri had no words. Vivian, he began. Do not. Her voice was ice. Do not say my name. Do not speak at all. She was shaking now. Tears streamed down her face, but her voice remained steady. You were going to kill me. You were going to let me fall in love with you and then sacrifice me like a lamb. It is not what you think. It is exactly what I think. She pointed at the letter crumpled on the floor. That is your handwriting. That is your plan. Tell me it is a forgery. Tell me it is a lie. He said nothing. Tell me, she screamed. I cannot. His voice was barely audible. It is true. It was the original plan. She laughed, but it sounded like breaking glass. The original plan. How comforting. So when did the plan change? When you saw how gullible I was? When you realized how easy it would be to manipulate the orphan girl who had never been loved? He stood, his face pale with something that looked like anguish. The plan changed when I looked into your eyes and saw my own loneliness reflected back. The plan changed when you knelt beside me while I bled and did not run. The plan changed when I realized I would rather die than hurt you. She stepped back as if his words were poison. You expect me to believe that? No. He shook his head. I expect nothing. I deserve nothing. But it is the truth. She ripped the ring from her finger and threw it at him. It bounced off his chest and clattered to the floor. Your mother's ring. Another manipulation. Another prop in your performance. Vivian, please. I trusted you. The words came out broken. I let myself believe that maybe, just once, someone saw me. Someone chose me. Someone thought I was worth something. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand. But I was just an ingredient. A means to an end. A sacrifice with a convenient heartbeat. He reached for her. She slapped his hand away. Do not touch me. Do not ever touch me again. She turned and walked toward the door. Where are you going? Away. Far away. Where you will never find me. Vivian, the curse will kill me within days. If you leave, I die. She stopped at the door. Her back was to him. Her shoulders shook. Good. And then she was gone. Damien stood alone in the room. The fire crackled. The ring lay on the cold stone floor. And for the first time in 1,000 years, the most feared vampire in the world wept. Vivian ran until her lungs burned. She did not know where she was going. She did not care. The estate grounds blurred around her, trees and shadows melting into a dark tunnel of pain. She collapsed near the old gardener's cottage, her knees hitting the cold earth. Her chest heaved. Her tears fell into the dirt. She had been a fool. A desperate, lonely fool who had mistaken manipulation for love. But even as rage consumed her, a small voice whispered in the back of her mind. He could have completed the ritual without telling you. He could have let you love him and die ignorant. Why did he keep the letter? Why did he not destroy the evidence? She pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to silence the voice. It does not matter. He lied. He planned to kill me. Nothing else matters. But the voice would not stop. He said the plan changed. He said he would rather die than hurt you. And when you left, he did not chase you. He did not compel you. He let you go. She screamed into the darkness, a raw sound of fury and grief. Inside the estate, Damien had not moved. Lucien found him standing at the window, staring at nothing. The letter lay crumpled at his feet. The ring sat on the windowsill. Brother. Lucien's voice was cautious. The servants said the girl fled. What happened? Damien did not turn. I destroyed the only good thing I have touched in 1,000 years. Lucien hesitated. The ritual. There is still time. We could find her. We could compel her. Damien's voice was quiet but deadly. If you finish that sentence, I will rip out your tongue and feed it to the hounds. Lucien stepped back. She is not a sacrifice, Damien continued. She was never meant to be. I knew it the moment I looked into her eyes. But I was too much of a coward to destroy that letter. Too much of a coward to trust that she would choose me freely. So what now? Now I die. As I should have died centuries ago. He turned finally. His face was hollow. Defeated. I have spent 1,000 years taking what I wanted. Destroying what opposed me. Punishing those who wronged me across generations. And where has it led? To this room. To this silence. To the knowledge that I finally found something worth having, and I poisoned it with my own hands. Lucien said nothing. There was nothing to say. Meanwhile, Vivian sat in the darkness outside the cottage. Her tears had dried. Her breathing had steadied. But the war inside her raged on. She thought of his stories. His laughter. The way he looked at her like she was the only real thing in a world of shadows. She thought of his confession about his father. The boy who had been sacrificed by the man who should have protected him. And she thought of his words on the balcony. You have made me want to live. Had that been a lie too? She pulled her knees to her chest and closed her eyes. The letter was real. The plan was real. But so was the way he held her hand. So was the way he wept when she walked away. People were not simple. She knew that better than anyone. Her mother had loved her and abandoned her. Her foster families had fed her and forgotten her. The world had taught her that love and cruelty could live in the same heart. So what if Damien was the same? What if he had planned to kill her and then changed his mind? What if the monster had grown a heart too late? She opened her eyes. The moon hung overhead, pale and indifferent. She had two choices. She could run. She could disappear into the world and never look back. She could let him die and tell herself it was justice. Or she could go back. She could demand the full truth. She could look into his eyes one last time and decide if anything between them had been real. She stood slowly. Her legs felt weak. Her heart felt weaker. But Vivian Cole had survived abandonment, poverty, and invisibility. She had survived every cruelty the world had thrown at her. She would survive this too. She turned toward the estate. And she began to walk. She found him in the library. He was sitting on the floor, his back against the bookshelf where she had discovered the letter. His eyes were closed. His breathing was shallow. The curse had accelerated in her absence, feeding on his despair like a living thing. He looked smaller somehow. Less like a king and more like a man waiting to die. She stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching him. He must have sensed her presence because his eyes opened slowly. When he saw her, something flickered across his face. Not hope. He did not dare hope. But something close to wonder. You came back. It was not a question. It was a prayer. She crossed the room and sat on the floor across from him. Close enough to touch. Far enough to run. I need you to tell me everything, she said. No more secrets. No more letters hidden in books. Everything. He nodded weakly. The curse was cast by a witch whose family I destroyed in 1523. They practiced dark magic. Sacrificed children. I burned their coven to ash. The last survivor cursed me with her dying breath. Said I would rot from within. Said the only cure was the willing heart of someone who loved me truly. He paused, gathering strength. For centuries, I ignored it. I did not believe in love. I did not want it. And then the curse activated 6 months ago, and I began to die. Vivian listened without interrupting. Lucian found the witch's descendants. They confirmed the cure. They told me the bloodline that carried the key. Your bloodline. Your family descended from the sister of the witch I killed. Her innocent sister who fled before the burning. Vivian's breath caught. She had never known her family history. Never known she carried such weight in her veins. I planned to seduce you, Damien continued. To make you love me. To complete the ritual and live. I told myself it was survival. I told myself you were a stranger, and strangers were expendable. His voice cracked. But then I met you. I watched you. I saw kindness I had forgotten existed. And when you knelt beside me while I bled, when you touched my shoulder without fear, something inside me broke. He looked at her with eyes that held 1,000 years of loneliness. I realized I did not want to live if it meant destroying you. I would rather die loved than live as the monster who killed the only person who ever saw me as human. She was crying now. Silent tears streaming down her face. Why did you keep the letter? Because I am a coward. Because part of me still wanted to live. Because I could not decide between survival and something I had never felt before. And now? Now I have decided. He reached out slowly and took her hand. His touch was ice cold. His grip was fading. I choose you, Vivian. I choose your life over mine. I choose your happiness over my survival. If you walk away right now, I will die blessing your name. Because knowing you, even for these few weeks, has been worth more than 1,000 years of empty existence. She squeezed his hand. You hurt me. I know. You lied to me. I know. You planned to kill me. Yes. And I will spend whatever time I have left apologizing for it. She leaned forward until their foreheads touched. His skin was cold against hers. I do not forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. He nodded. I do not deserve forgiveness. But I am not leaving. He pulled back slightly, confusion flickering in his eyes. Why? Because you chose to die rather than hurt me. Because you wept when I walked away. Because somewhere beneath the monster, there is a man worth saving. She cupped his face in her hands. And because I refuse to let you die before you have earned my forgiveness. He laughed weakly, a sound somewhere between joy and disbelief. That could take centuries. Then you had better find a way to live. She kissed his forehead gently. In that moment, something shifted in the room. The air grew warmer. The shadows retreated. Damien gasped, his hand flying to his chest. What is happening? Vivian watched his color return to his face. As his breathing steadied. As the death that had been consuming him began to retreat. The curse, he whispered. It is breaking. She looked at him with sudden understanding. A willing heart. Freely given love. The ritual never required my death. It required my choice. He stared at her in wonder. You chose me. Even knowing what I planned. Even knowing what I am. You chose me anyway. She smiled through her tears. Do not make me regret it. He pulled her into his arms and held her like she was the only thing keeping him anchored to the earth. I will spend eternity making sure you never do. They stayed like that for a long time. Two broken people holding each other together. Outside, the sun began to rise. And for the first time in 1,000 years, Damien Valtieri watched the dawn without fear. Because he was no longer alone. Because Vivian Cole had given him something more powerful than any curse. She had given him a reason to live. 3 months later, they stood on the same balcony where they had danced under the moon. She wore his mother's ring again. This time, she had accepted it freely. He wrapped his arms around her from behind and rested his chin on her shoulder. I have a confession, he murmured. Another one? Should I be worried? He chuckled softly. I have already begun planning revenge against the descendants of the witch who cursed me. She turned in his arms, raising an eyebrow. Damien. What? I said I was reformed. I did not say I was forgiving. There are at least 7 generations that need to answer for what their ancestor did. She shook her head, but she was smiling. You are impossible. And yet you love me anyway. She kissed him softly. And yet I love you anyway. He grinned, that dangerous, charming grin that had conquered nations. Then it seems I have already won. She laughed. And somewhere in the shadows, Lucien watched his brother smile and wondered if perhaps, after all these centuries, the monster had finally found peace. Not through conquest. Not through vengeance. But through the love of an invisible girl who refused to let him die. Now tell me something. Where are you watching this story from? I would love to know which corner of the world is enjoying this with me right now. Drop your country and city in the comments. Let me see how far this story has traveled. And listen. If you made it all the way here, if you felt something, if you cried or smiled or held your breath even once, then you already know this channel is different. We are building something special here. A community of people who crave real love stories, vampire romance, drama, and twists that hit deep. But here is the thing. I cannot keep creating these without you. I stayed up late writing this. I poured my heart into every single word. And all I am asking is one click. 1 second of your time. Hit that subscribe button. Join the fastest growing vampire love stories community on YouTube. We have so much planned for you. Stories that will break your heart and put it back together. Stories that will make you believe in love again. Do not be the person who watches the whole thing and leaves without subscribing. That breaks my heart more than any curse ever could. You are special. You are part of this family now. So hit subscribe. Ring the notification bell. And I will see you in the next story. Now let me ask you this. What would you have done in Vivian's place? Would you have forgiven Damien or walked away forever? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one.